Hello and welcome. I'm Katrina Green, the Director of Property Management here at Gray Residential, and I host the Complex podcast, which everyone thinks is funny because we're not supposed to call them a complex. It's really everything about multifamily. And today we're really talking more about leadership in general, but the multifamily industry is so big, encompasses really just so many moving parts, because I know that my guest doesn't just work with the management side. I have seen him now working with the vendor side as well, and just very excited to have Tom.
And the people side.
And the people side, everybody. So excited to have Tom Meier here. He has a lot of, titles. And I was like, before I was just like, Tom, like, what do you call yourself? Executive leadership coach. And he said corporate therapist. And I was like, nailed it. Nailed it. And so really excited to have Tom. So let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, everyone has to start this way. It's impossible not to. I know you already have followers, but Let's tell my listeners, who is Tom of Equis Consulting?
Yeah, perfect. So I've been with Equis for the better part of 2 decades, and then I had a banking career, believe it or not, 2 decades before that. So it was, I don't know, do you know that history?
I do, and I hoped that you would kind of tell that story, because the first time that I met you in person, you really did give a very, a deep background. Yeah. And it doesn't take that long, so I think that you should share it. I think you should share it today.
Yeah, so when I was in the banking industry, my background is actually social work. So corporate, that's where the corporate therapist thing comes from. And so when I was going after that degree, everybody that loved me and wanted me to be successful when I was in my 20s said, you'll never use it. You'll never, like, what are you going to do with the social work degree? Like, come on, that's like art historian. Don't, and I use it every day. Every single day. In the banking industry, it was kind of a rare commodity. So I finished up. I actually got my degree while I was working. Finished it up, and I'm not kidding you, Katrina, within 2 weeks of graduating, they posted a position for an internal outplacement director, and they needed somebody with a psych or social work background. And the
stars aligned for you there. That's right. Amazing.
It was crazy. They didn't expect to get somebody internally, but they had to do legally an internal posting first. Yeah. So I ended up putting in for the position. Long story short, got the job. And then that was when, now you got to go, no, this was 1990 through 2000, basically, which was the decade of mergers for banks. Like if you had a small community bank in LaPorte, Indiana, it was going to get gobbled up by 5 other banks and then eventually end up being Chase. Yeah. That's what happened to us. So I was the outplacement director because it was more cost effective for us to provide that resource internally. And it was quite honestly grief counseling. Just helping people through the transition, because these were not performance issues. These were people that, we had merged with another bank in downtown Indianapolis, and you could literally look across the street and see somebody doing your job in another building.
Actually, now that you're saying that, like outplacement, that's not a phrasing that
that people know.
Yeah, well, or just that we've used. It actually sounds better than,
Rift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Then taking the cash and prizes behind door number 3. So I ended up working with everybody from entry-level employees up through senior-level executives to help them find jobs in the community after we were no longer in need of whatever they were bringing to the table.
Wow.
So that was the first corporate therapy gig, teaching people how to remarket themselves. But there's so many parallels to that in leadership. Mm-hmm. And in that tenure, I ended up having a windows or a bird's eye view to all those conversations around how do people get on a list? Like, frog in my throat. Who gets on the list and how do they get on the list? And at one point, viscerally, these things are just nailed in my mind. I remember asking a question about somebody that was on a list and how they got on the list. And somebody said, well, we don't know what she does.
Oh, gosh.
That's how she got on the list.
Right.
And so I made it my own personal mission to teach people how to brand themselves more intentionally.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be the person
like before you get on the list.
Before you get on the list.
Right.
You don't want to be the person that is, I don't know what she does. And you certainly don't want to be the person that's a problem or perceived as a problem. So it started this whole thing. And the only reason I left that was because it was so emotionally hard. I mean, when your client load day in and day out is these wonderful, well-intentioned, talented people that we are just turning into the marketplace. I from a value system standpoint, I couldn't do it. So I put my name on the list and said, you know what, if you can toss me a bunch of money to go away, I'm happy to do that. And I remember my boss at the time said, we don't sever the willing. So I was like, well, then we have an interesting conundrum because I think my time here is closed. And I want to leave on my own terms. So that's when I joined Equis. Because I wanted to do leadership, that kind of leadership development with people that we weren't getting rid of.
Right.
You know, let's develop the people that we want to keep, not the people that we want to hemorrhage into the workforce.
Right.
So
tell everyone, you just told me, you know, a few moments ago, but share everyone, you know, the name of the company, the meaning behind it.
Equis Consulting. Everybody confuses it with EQUUS, which is the equestrian version, the horse version. That's not us. We are EQUIS, and it's Greek, and it literally means the sum of two parts. So we like to partner with our clients where it's not about me telling you what to do, and it's not about you dictating what you want to me. It's about us forming a partnership and saying, okay, what's the need on the table? What's the burning platform? And how can we partner effectively to make sure that we get that taken care of? Which you and I have done a little bit.
I was just going to say, and like, that's how I, you know, met you. You were referred to me by someone that was an HR professional at a very, very large property management company. And I had known what her background was. And when I saw a need, I reached out to her and I just said, Haley, this is what I'm looking for. Like, do you have anyone? Do you know anyone that does this? And, you know, I don't want to say it's, you know, such a tight niche that it's hard to find. I think, you know, but she knew my organization a little bit at that point. She was doing some consulting herself. And she was like, oh, I know who you need. I know what you need. And I know, you know, who you need. She didn't have any details, but
it's a super small niche. I mean, no kidding, because what you get in most consulting firms is somebody that's going to come in and do a change management workshop, or they're going to do a stress management workshop, or they're going to do a workshop, and they're going to do a workshop that is a binder somewhere on their shelf that they're going to pull off and crack open and kind of put people through and then send you an invoice. And that is not what we do.
Well, not effective at all.
Well, I mean, in certain circumstances.
Or maybe just not as effective as what I experienced.
Correct. When you work at higher levels, you know, mid-level managers, directors and above, the people that are really under a lot of stress in the organization. I'm not talking about the entry-level folks that punch the clock and leave. You know, I get that. And I've done that. And you've done that. And there's a different level of stress when you start being accountable for other people and accountable for work processes and accountable for revenue streams. It's just a different level of stress. And I'm not going to pile 16 of those people in a room and do a workshop. I need to work with them one-on-one or in very small executive leadership teams to see, you know, okay, how can I support you with this corporate therapy? Like, what do we need? What's the most difficult conversation you need to have as a leadership team? And how can I shepherd you through that conversation from one side to the other? And keep everything kind of psychologically safe while we do that.
Yeah, and it's been years since we met and started It has. I looked it up. I looked back in all my text messages because I was like, when did I meet Tom? I want to say 2019.
Good Lord.
Yeah, right. But you are the voice in my head sometimes, just as it relates to, you know, really recognizing some of the variables that keep people from sometimes saying what needs to be, you know, saying what needs to be said, sometimes standing up for yourself or standing up, you know, for someone else, depending on what all those variables are.
Sure.
And I love words, and you're really good with words. Yeah. So like, I just sit there and fangirl a little bit when some of your phrasing, I think is really what has stuck with me. Maybe not the most necessarily, but, you know, the distillation and how you can just kind of really break it down. And like, I remember you said one time, And I think you were just trying to give me a pep talk to keep moving forward, with some things. And you just said, look, strong heart's important work.
Yeah.
And, some of those small phrases, they feel a little bit like they should be framed on your wall, but they are, it's legitimate. And I think at the corporate level, that is where, we're always out there trying to find resources for those that, work in a capacity under us, or for those that are out there, doing frontline work and boots on the ground. We're always looking for those resources, and we completely ignore ourselves or
in the process.
Yeah, in the process, because someone somewhere's, maybe no one's responsible for helping us find resources. So it is like somebody just has to, step up and do it. And, that's why I called you in the first place, many, many years ago. And then obviously we've stayed in touch. And so, thank you so much for sharing, your background. And, at this point, we'll point it to multifamily because this is what we do.
Yeah. It's all people stuff. So it's all the same.
It is all people stuff for sure. But what I think is different today than maybe at the time that I originally met you is that now you have done leadership training, for more work types. Like, so you, like the maintenance technician, I referenced you twice on my podcast, once with Joe Powell and once with Nikki Laura. And both times we talked about a couple different things, but it was mentioned that you do a maintenance leadership toolkit because, and I think that's the interesting thing too. Like, what's the difference between, in your words, I'd love to hear how you answer this. And I didn't put this on the list, so just roll.
Oh, that's okay. We'll roll.
What is the difference between a leader and a manager?
Such a good question.
Thank you.
So I define them, well, first of all, back to the language and the things hanging on the wall and the, quippy little stuff that I'll throw right in the middle of a conversation. The only tool we have is language.
Yeah.
It's it.
True.
I mean, the way you show up and the way you communicate a message to people, it means you've got to learn how to use language like a tool. It's like a scalpel for a surgeon. So I don't ever say something I don't intend. I have built a brand around being very intentional with words. So it's appropriate that we start with what is the difference between a manager and a leader? A manager is somebody that manages work processes, workflow, revenue streams. When you think about all of the pieces of paper and the emails and the electronic documents and all the stuff you have to manage, that's management.
Yeah.
That leadership is about people. And if you're really effective in your role, you're going to do both. You have to manage the process. You have to manage getting us from Monday through Friday with all of the deadlines and deliverables intact. But you also have to lead the people, which is about influence and coaching up and skilling up and helping someone when they're on the struggle bus and figuring out what the struggle bus is and how you can get them to the other side of it. So when you're in a position as a leader of influence, you're leading. When you're making sure that we hit a deadline, you're managing. Is that clear?
It is. And I think and the reason I asked and brought it up is because what I have witnessed and been part of also is that we look at people that have checked the boxes on the tasks, the managing of the tasks.
Yep.
And then there comes this moment where it's like, okay, now you're ready to be a leader, but there was no, But
I don't do peopling.
Well, some of them don't do peopling. And that math's not mathing a lot of times. Yeah. And it comes in it, and it, I think too, there's like a polarized area. Like we see people that I'm going to call their leadership style, I'll let them do whatever they want because I want them to keep coming every day and I want them to like me, which is not results driven.
That's not leadership. That's a popularity concept.
There you go. Right. Exactly. And then you have, maybe the other side that is so results driven that, it drives the people away that are, we're making you successful in getting those results and, just like trying to understand the balance. But, everybody wants to have a manager title and a supervisor title.
Sure.
And I don't think that the people that take those roles are understanding fully. You just transitioned in a big, big way. Yeah. And it bigger and bigger as it goes up, like you said, because of the responsibility and the accountability,
You need more tools.
More tools and language. I love that you said that. Language is our only
Yeah.
It's our only tool, kind of.
If you're listening in or watching on YouTube, you will realize very quickly we've not looked at our paper because the conversation is going in a wonderful.
Basically, kind of.
It's good.
We're fine.
So here's the thing with the whole peopling part of it. I heard this years ago. Leadership, because it's about people and leading people and influencing people, we tend to think that if we get to know them really well, we'll do it better. Like leadership is just get to know your people. Get to know, send them birthday cards, know the names of their family, know that, just do the relationship thing. Okay, relationship building is a part of it, but it's not leadership. That's not what leadership is. And somebody said to me one time, if the answer to this was just getting to know people better and that would solve everything, no marriage would ever fail. Because
you know everything.
The person you know better than anybody in the world, and you still didn't have the tools necessary to make that interaction successful for probably a lot of reasons, half of which have nothing to do with you. Right? So, let's let those folks off the hook. So it's not about getting to know your people. It's about understanding what skills and tools you need to have to influence. Do you know? And the baseline is, know who they are. Like, know who they are, develop a relationship, form a connection. Mm-hmm. But then you have to have the skill level required to give somebody tough feedback, to give somebody a stretch assignment and know if it's going to be a stretch assignment for you or for them. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it's not. So it's just that's where the corporate therapy comes in. That's where the tools that I teach people are the tools they need to make sure they have influence in those circles, so that they can so they have a snowball's chance of getting the work product done, getting the results, generating the revenue, whatever that looks like.
Right. And I absolutely have witnessed I don't want to say that's like there's this year time frame. I don't want to be like, well, in the last 3 years or post COVID, like I don't necessarily want to put a earmark on that necessarily. I can tell you for sure that the way that I was led when I was, starting in this career path is very different than what I see people doing now. And I think some of it is, obviously we're going to learn. We watch someone and learn. That's how that works. And I remember the very first meeting I had here at Gray Residential, I like speeches kind of. I never plan them. I feel like I'm better when I don't plan.
Yeah.
But
you are.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm not self-aware. We'll talk about that later. I gave a speech about, no different than children raised in one household versus another household.
Yeah.
Here I was coming in as a director in a company that already existed, but I wouldn't say, we're kind of a startup. So, and there's no secret to that. And that's not a bad thing at all. We're very nimble, but I just said, I don't know how all of you have been raised in this business. I don't know what your household looked like. I don't know what your rules were. I don't know what your examples were. I only know what mine were. And I attribute a great amount of success to all of my initial leaders. Most of them I learned great things from, and some of them I learned what not to do.
Sometimes those are the more powerful lessons.
Sure.
They're
sure
the ones
are.
you remember.
But now I feel like we're sitting in this place where somehow we have to rein it in and go backwards and restart the learning process no matter what position anybody is in. And I think that's top to bottom. And I'm not being cruel or accusatory to anybody that's in my world. I'm just saying, I think that we all have to circle back and start the learning process over about who we are, what we bring, what we can bring, what we have to bring. Mm-hmm. There are just some basic things, right? Yeah. Like there's some basics.
Way more basic than you would ever imagine. If you're listening and you're probably thinking, okay, so what's a good example of a leadership skill that somebody would have to have at the table? And I'll give you a really good one about going way back to basics and starting.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm here for it.
I have perfected the art, and when I've perfected the art, I'm then able to teach other people how to perfect the art of being unflappable. You've never, you and I have known each other for a long time. You're aware of me enough to know that I experience a pretty wide range of emotions. I'm a more, some people have a tight little range of emotional expression. I'm way more out here. Like, it's just, if I'm in a good mood, it's a great mood. If I'm in a piss poor mood, it's, the days are dark. So I have a wider range. And as a leader, I have learned and perfected the art of cranking that down to a much more narrow scope. Because I have to look unflappable. When you're going through things like COVID or, folks that report to you losing family members or, any of the stuff that can happen in the course of a full and complete life, you cannot show up and instill any level of or have your people instill any level of confidence in you if you're all over the board.
Absolutely.
If you were dragging your ass across the carpet one day, and doing cartwheels through the office the next, it has to be more intentional. And so I've learned how to be I call it pleasantly curious. I'm always in a pleasant mood, and I'm always curious, and I'm always up for it, and I'm always, I'm going to show up and I'm going to look like I'm in a relatively good mood, whether or not I am.
Sure.
You should not know, right? Because we have stuff to do today.
Yes.
Today it's a podcast. Tomorrow it's different stuff. So being more intentional about that has been really helpful. And when I've seen leaders get in trouble, it's because they haven't mastered that very basic skill.
Absolutely.
Here's a worse thing I hear. Well, I'll be doing a 360, and somebody will say, well, you just have to know when to approach him. Okay. Yeah. They should never say that about you as a leader under any circumstances.
No. Yeah.
We are working in an environment where information is currency. I should be able to tell you anything at any time for any reason that I think is relevant to our revenue stream. Whether or not it's going to piss you off needs to be the second priority. So you shouldn't be the leader ever where people say, oh, well, you just don't approach her today or don't approach him today. I don't want to be gender specific with it because believe me, it's across the board.
Yeah.
So you got to tighten it down. So then we get into the second conversation. Well, isn't that being inauthentic? Are you really being So I'm curious
I think it turns into being your authentic self. I highly pride myself on composure.
Yeah.
And it probably has translated to, maybe a lack of excitement or joy for maybe some of the smaller celebrations that should probably occur. I recognize that my issue when I'm in that space is that I don't go for a ride either way. I don't go for a ride down here, and I don't go for a ride. I probably then don't go for a ride up here
either.
And so, but I'm, however, I think wasn't it you that taught me that? You were like, if you use but, you just negated everything in the front. So just use and. And I had a regional manager, my first regional manager ever. And she walked in, and I was like 21, I think, leasing agent, loved leasing, still think it's the best job ever.
Yeah.
She was composed. So it didn't matter what you brought to her, composed.
What steaming pile of unexpected you threw on her desk.
And I now, I can sit at a big table and, maybe something kind of big happened, let's just say over the weekend, because it always does. And I just smile and go, we got it.
Yeah,
we got it. And I don't necessarily diminish it for anyone. I want everyone to know that we're not rattled. We have already seen most of this, and whatever's new, we've seen something like it and it's solvable.
Right.
So but you did an illustration. See, I do remember a lot. In one of the first group classes that we had with your group sessions, group therapy.
You
did this illustration with your hands about, people don't bring things to their leaders because if predictability in the reaction is, or unpredictability is high, trust is low.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I've repeated that and I literally used the hand motion because that's what you did. And I think that at every single level that is happening. I think managers aren't being, and I'm saying managers at this point because I'm not identifying a lot of leadership qualities. They don't want to approach performance concerns, and I think it's this this unpredictable reaction. So so they just don't do it.
Right. Well, here's the benefit. If you learn to be relatively unflappable, you learn to tighten the range down so that you're pleasantly curious, pleasantly engaged, in a good mood, all of the time.
Yeah.
You practice,
or appear to be.
Yeah. Right. Well, here's the deal. When you practice it, it's like anything you practice, like swinging a ball bat. You get better at it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you today that is, to your point, that's my authentic self. I've learned how to kind of crank that down and get my own set point as a leader that looks pleasantly engaged and unflappable. So you stop being intimidated, and this is the piece nobody gets. You stop being intimidated by the fluctuations that everybody else has. I didn't anticipate that, because what would happen to me, to use hand gestures, if you can see it, is this. If I were all over the board, if my range was here, I was going to be subject to being really reactionary if somebody's range was here.
Yeah.
Think about an argument you have with your spouse and how fast it can escalate.
Right.
Or one of your kids, they do this and then you do this.
Yeah.
And when you train yourself over time to stay right here and they do this, you don't go there. I don't.
Yeah.
I just kind of look at it like, that's interesting. Look at that range. That's pretty wild.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like I get more curious about what's causing that. Like where I'm going in my head as a leadership therapist is, okay, is that a reaction for you or is that the norm?
Right.
Because some people have a really high norm. Or a really wide.
Definitely.
We call them drama kings. Again, not to be gender specific.
say whatever you want. That's what I was picturing.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're high drama, you're going to be all over the board. And do I need to react to that as a leader? No.
And I'm always like, what's fueling this?
Yeah.
What's motivating you? Like, where is it coming from?
Or if you're low drama and then you have a spike, a deviation, I'm going to be on alert to that. Mm-hmm. But I've trained myself to manage my own set point, which puts me into a position of being able to observe you more effectively because I'm not getting dragged around at the end of your leash.
Which is happening out there. I know it is.
Of course it is.
I know it is.
Think about and this is what makes multifamily such a challenging environment. Because I've worked in non-multifamily and multifamily. Yeah. When I'm working in non-multifamily, I'll do my best to articulate this, and your listeners will get it if I say it correctly, using language like a scalpel. When I work in non-multifamily, and people are customer facing, it's more transactional. Think about my background in the bank. Customer facing, that's a teller. Yeah. You're with that person for one interaction, they do their deposit, and then they're gone. Mm-hmm. So even if the customer facing folks get stressed, it's stressed for a very short period of time, and it's not terribly intense. Yeah. If we denied their mortgage, maybe, right? And other kind of retail environments, it's more the customer facing piece of it is really transactional. And the customer-facing piece creates the kind of ripple effect through the organization. Now go over to multifamily. You're not doing a deposit. You're unclogging somebody's toilet. You're fixing a leak. You're in their home. And it's this weird space where it's not really their home. Right? Yeah, it's their home, but it's not their home. Right. Like we have a responsibility for upkeep and maintenance and customer-facing stuff. So it's not transactional. Yeah. It's relational. So
sometimes these relationships last decades. I mean, we have communities built in 1984 that have had people for 20 years.
Well, so now think about that relationship kind of component with anybody in multifamily that's customer resident facing. I'll just use that term. Yeah. It's more intense. Yeah. So you're going to have a more intense ripple effect through the organization. Yeah. Because the challenges and the problems and the stress are just bigger on the front end. That's what our leaders are dealing with. That's what they're up against. And it's unlike any other industry I've ever had the privilege of working with.
I love that you called it a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it is. It is. I mean, I get to do the work I love, and I get to help people be more effective. So
interesting, though, like we focus on sales training. Yep. And I'm not saying it doesn't include an element of relationship building. It has to.
Yeah.
I mean, great salespeople are the ones that are building those relationships really quickly and, that rapport.
Right.
But we don't train past the sale. Like that's the result we're looking for. And I'm not saying that we don't try to also teach people how to, ask for the renewal. But I mean, I'm just saying it's like as soon as that sales process is achieved, there's not a whole lot of, support and helping even on conflict resolution and resident complaints and resident issues. I will tell you, as a longtime trainer in this industry, that's actually what leasing associates tell us they need more training in.
Oh.
But they're looking to their leaders for it, and the leaders don't have it.
Well, no, because the leaders, and I don't fault the leaders for this.
I don't either.
The leaders are a backstop for all the stress they're experiencing.
Yeah.
So they're dealing with their own uphill or downhill stress, however you decide to, position it.
Yeah.
And it is, and if all of that were a challenge, BC, BC stands for before COVID.
Yeah.
If all of that were a challenge before COVID, think of what happened in COVID when our lovely residents were stuck in their homes.
Oh my gosh.
Not able to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
I was there for all that.
Oh.
I was there for all that. People were complaining about, that was the worst. I guess, nobody could park anymore because everybody was home at the same time. People were complaining about bird feeders and just really trivial things. And you just want to be like, look, our world is shutting down and you're flipping out because there's bird seed on your patio.
It's all the only thing you had to look at.
Well, that, maybe. But that was emotionally charged. All of those things were emotionally charged too. I don't, how do we get...
They were lifting toilet paper out of the residence centers.
Oh my God. I'm gonna write a book about it someday.
It got insane.
It got pretty crazy. And that level, like that space that you talk, how do we get all the team members, and this I think applies to executive level also, how do we get all team members to realize that fundamental composure or just being able to be right there. How do we get everyone to understand how important that is for an organization to move forward on other things? We have to start somewhere to be able to get bigger places. That's relatively small. How do we do it?
I have to think about that one for a minute.
Because people will say maintenance tech so-and-so, they're just, they're a hothead. These are the words that they use. I'm not calling anybody that.
Right, of course.
And I'm not thinking of anyone specific. I've done this a long time. I could be naming 40 people at the same time I'm saying one. But I mean this person's a hothead. If I approach them, if I give them one more service request or one more turn, they're just going to lose their mind. So I'm we're not going to do this or we're not going to do that. They talk a lot about behavior. Oh, well, my leasing person, she, can't. Whatever.
The best way that I can describe it is to use an example, and I'll keep it generic enough that nobody will hopefully understand. Because I like to keep things kind of confidential. So I got a call from a company, and they wanted me to work with a really talented maintenance tech that was experiencing some challenges. The pain and the stress was coming outside.
For the record, we're all experiencing whatever you're talking about. You don't even have to tell me. We are also experiencing it.
And, like any other corporate therapist would say to the leader, okay, tell me what you're seeing. And then I go to the person and I say, okay, this is what we're seeing. Correct that. That would be anybody but me.
Okay.
So I hear what's going on for this person, outside in perspective, right? And then I sit down with the maintenance tech and I say, hey, obviously, you know why I'm here. Yeah. Tell me what's going on. What's the world look like from your perspective? I've already got the other perspective. Now I want to see what it looks like from your perspective. And when the trust is established in the relationship, because I know how to do that, this person opens up like a book and says, well, there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and I'm supporting 3 properties, and da-da. And all of a sudden, everything that I'm seeing from the leader's perspective makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. And it's completely understandable. Now I know how we need to get this person supported. Like, the answer is not for them just to get fixed.
Yeah.
The answer is for someone in that transaction to understand the stress points and what the person's up against so that we can get them supported. Because it's amazing what kind of maladaptive behavior gets corrected when a person gets supported. Now, if we find ourselves, and this is where you are too, if we find ourselves in a position where a leader says to me, honestly, we don't have the support.
Yeah.
Like we don't, we're running tissue paper thin.
Yeah.
Then what I say is, all right, so let's take this maladaptive behavior and make it a non-issue because it is just a reaction to what the person is up against. I think you can set some expectations. Like, it's fine to have some of the stuff going on. Just don't do it in front of a resident.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's set some expectation about that. Yeah. But it's when I start having those kind of straightforward, no nonsense, no book-related conversations with somebody, it's amazing what they're willing to do for me.
I think it's interesting, though, that so you, in that scenario, were a third party. Yeah. Everyone understood your purpose.
Sure.
Everyone, and immediately when someone meets you, they have to realize, I would think, like, this person's on my side, our side, on the side of success, on the side of getting to the other side of it. Yeah. So there's that. But like, on a large scale, how does a company, I think that, and I'm not dogging like survey platforms or anything like that. But I think a lot of companies are like, well, we surveyed everyone, and they said that they don't get paid enough, and that, they want more PTO, but also they say that they're overworked, and, we're not getting work done, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm only bringing this up to say, without a third party, is it possible, or what could that look like organizationally? Like, who will they tell that to? Who do they trust? Yeah. That's what makes me nervous. I ask for feedback. I solicit things. But I know for sure people withhold. I feel like you're just like trying to weed through it. And how do we get them to feel psychologically safe? Your phrasing. Yeah.
2 things. Okay. Really simple. Because you know me, I won't overcomplicate anything. The first is the unflappability. Right? We've already talked about that. It still
goes back to just no reaction or little.
Just be unflappable. Figure out, as if you bring me in to work with your company, you should be able to tell me any ugly truth about your company from your perspective and not have me go,
right.
Like, unflappable. Like, okay, I've probably seen, to your point, some version of it at some point.
Solvable.
So it's solvable. It's just,
that's what I say every time.
Point.
This is solvable.
So the first skill is unflappability. The second skill, and I'm going to say this, and you're going to be like, oh, that's so simple. And it is so simple. Curiosity.
Yeah.
I go in with curiosity. I don't go. There's a Stephen Covey quote that I love. Seek first to understand, not to reply.
That's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I go into any engagement as a corporate therapist, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. And I got a bunch of people yakking at me like, well, this is what's wrong with this person. And, this is what's wrong with senior management. And I have to go under that whitewater and wave. I have to go under it and say, okay, tell me more. What's going on? What's causing the stress? What can we do to alleviate it? And when that combination of curiosity and unflappability, I've watched it bring people down when they're hyped up, right? Like, you can level someone down if you don't react to what they're telling you, and you just get super curious about it, and you don't get all judgy. You don't get all like, well, I know what this is, and I know what to tell you to do.
Oh, I was just thinking to myself, like, I need to transition out of my default being that I already know or can already see what's happening or what's going wrong, what's going right, et cetera. Like, I'm a digger. I'm like a dog just digging in the dirt all the time on the side. As
long as you're curiously digging.
I am curiously digging. I'm not looking. I'm never intentionally looking to see what's going wrong. Like I always have an intent and purpose.
Yeah.
That doesn't have this like, oh, let's catch people doing things, wrong or whatever. But I would say that, and I know I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
If you've done this a long time, we do default to being like, I know what this is. I know how to fix it. I know, you know what I mean? And
well,
so
we're
then,
fixers.
well, sure. I am the definition of that, and it is not always good.
We're the Ray Donovans of the residential world.
That's funny. There's actually someone in this office I call Ray Donovan, which is real funny. And I loved that show, actually. And I loved Ray in the end. I was just like, but I absolutely fall into this category where, and I don't want to say I'm not curious, but I think for sure, we think that we already know what the problem is because at the surface level, we're seeing, maybe we see service requests not being done, or we see units taking too long to get ready. It definitely probably takes more of those open-ended, just like, tell me what's going on, instead of me being like, let me tell you what's going on. And I don't do it with a tone. My body had a tone.
We all do.
I don't do it. I don't execute it that way. I promise.
A tone.
It did. Well, because people that are listening can't see, but on YouTube, I just want them to know.
It's crazy, and it's interesting because what people are going to be saying is, well, that's great if you have all the time in the world. Like I can already hear the
because we have expectations too.
Yes.
Like here I'm looking at budgets, but then drop everything. The prioritization situation is difficult sometimes too.
So here's where we go with that. What you and I are talking about, that being curious, doing a little digging, appropriate digging, trying to figure out what the real issue is, that is not an expectation that I hold for any one of my leaders 100% of the time.
Yeah.
There are times when you do see a surface level problem and you fix it. Mm-hmm. Like you just, you cannot scream at a resident. Not okay.
Right.
So let's just put an expectation there. You can scream to me because I'm unflappable, but I'm not gonna, fix the things that need to be fixed quickly. If you have a long-standing issue that keeps coming up and coming up and coming up, and despite your best fixing, you haven't been able to resolve it, that's when you have to go into curious.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with that client engagement I had with the very talented maintenance person. This was somebody that was really good at that job. Mm-hmm. And we just had these minor explosions that would happen in front of other people that it shouldn't have happened in front of. So we just got to figure that out now. That's all it is. What's the trigger? What's causing it? How are you reacting to it? What skill can I help you develop to get outside of that? And it just takes a longer conversation. And you don't have to do that with everybody. If you've got somebody you don't want to keep, cut bait.
Yeah.
Just cut bait. But if it's somebody that's really good at what they do and you need to skill them up a little,
I would love to see statistics, if they even exist, on how often or how far we're willing to hold on before we cut bait. Under the guise of, it's difficult to hire. I've had an ad running for 3 months, and I am always sitting in the place where I'm just like, I'm going to stop looking for people. I'm going to start matching up the work, the work required and how to get the work accomplished, because it can be done more creatively than we're doing it in the industry, in a variety of different ways. But I don't know. I do wish that there was a situation where we could, feel more confident that we could, that we would onboard people the way we need to, that we would give them a speech on day one that says, you're going to receive feedback.
Yeah.
This is what it sounds like. This is what it looks like, or, whatever. And so that way they know that it's coming and that we just give it. And then we aren't so worried about cutting bait because we've done so many great things
along the way.
We've done so many great things along the way that nobody has to, lose their livelihood or move on to a new place. And in our case, sometimes move out. People's homes are tied, not necessarily, I don't know what percentage, but I mean, many times someone's home and work are tied together.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
more so post-COVID.
Probably, absolutely so, but always has been that way in multifamily. And so when we're looking at this person, when you're saying cut bait, the feels come in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't want to uproot his or her family. I don't want it, like the impact is
you're
different.
talking about the folks that we hire that live in the properties.
Live at the properties. And then so like to say it that way, people in the multifamily industry are like, yeah, but Tom, that's not that's not real. And anyone that's sitting back there and saying like, no, we follow a progressive disciplinary path and we don't keep people past 90 days. If they do whatever, we get rid of them and we replace them.
Yeah.
Cool. If you're doing that and able to do that, congrats, you win. But when I talk to when I talk to operators, I do, just the things that we, I guess are tolerating. It's just really, really painful. I think it all boils down to trust. Maybe you can help us. And this is a bit of a reverse question. What are we doing to break the trust with the people that we work directly with? Like, what are some things, and you don't have to use me, but I'm comfortable with that. Like, what are some things that you think someone like me in my role might be doing that actually is lessening trust with my managers or lessening trust with my regional managers?
Yeah.
And it could be with it could be with like
no
the best of
malintent.
Intentions. I just wonder if you've seen behaviors that are counterproductive on the trust side where we think we're really building something up.
So,
that was totally not in our notes anywhere.
Oh, no. It's fine. I love this.
Good.
It's perfect. So, somebody asked Warren Buffett, promise this is related.
I'm ready.
Ask Warren Buffett, how does somebody go broke? Like, how do we go broke from a relationship standpoint? How do we go broke from a financial standpoint? And I loved his answer. A nickel at a time. A nickel at a time. So here's the way I think about it. Any relationship that you have, and these people that you lead, you have relationships with.
Yeah.
Any relationship that you have with anybody you're attempting to lead is built or destroyed one conversation at a time. Just one conversation at a time. And any mishandling of one of those conversations can turn the tide in a different direction. If you I use a lot of personal examples in the workshops that I do because, again, corporate therapist. If you've had a failed relationship, a failed, marriage, there was probably one conversation where you were like, I'm done. Like, there were a lot of other conversations that kind of led up to it, but then there's one that just is a watershed, and you're like, okay, decision's made. I have to move in a different direction for reasons that have nothing to do with you, right? Yeah. So when we think about trust with people and building trust, I break it down into something that's more manageable than this big ethereal concept called trust, because it's like air. You can't really see it.
So abstract.
It's so abstract.
Yeah.
So I try very, very diligently to make sure that I manage the conversations with people. And you have to think about what I do and what rides on a conversation. If I mishandle a conversation with a client in the first instance, we're done.
Yeah.
Like it can't go farther than that. So managing the interactions, being respectful, being unflappable, all those basic things create trust and psychological safety. You should be able to tell me anything and I won't react. Mm-hmm. You can always trust me to be curious, which means I'm not going to come in with an answer. Sum of two parts. I'm going to listen to what your challenges are and we're going to figure it out together. And then I'm never not going to handle you with respect, not with kid gloves.
Yeah.
With respect.
Right.
Which means if I feel like I need to give you some challenging or difficult feedback, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it in a respectful way. You've seen me challenge people before in some of our leadership meetings.
Right.
I've never not been respectful. Right. So that's what are we doing to break trust? We move too fast. We say shit we shouldn't say.
Yeah.
We have impact that we shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Right. Because we're not. And again, I'm not advocating for people to be on it 24/7. You have to, as a leader, learn to recognize those points in time where the relationship could go broke.
Yeah.
Where somebody comes into your office and you can tell by the look on their face and the way they walked across the leasing center that they've had it. Mm-hmm. And they throw themselves in the chair and you just know I better handle that very carefully. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean cautiously, I mean with care.
Yeah.
So tell me what's going on. And if I don't have the time to do that, if I got a resident coming in 5 minutes, I'm going to handle that conversation with respect. I would look at the person and say, I can tell there's a lot going on. I want to hear every last bit of it. And I also have to balance having a resident come in 5 minutes. So if you think we can get through this in 4.5 minutes, I will have that conversation with you. If not, do you need to take a walk around the building? Do you need to take a walk around the property? Like, get your head on straight. Let me meet with this resident and let's connect at 4. Like, that level of respect, unflappability, curiosity, and intention, you're going to not go broke in that conversation.
Except that leasing associate might walk out the door and be like, she told me if I can't tell her in 4.5 minutes that I don't have her time. I mean, like, it's interesting how it
spins.
How it gets twisted sometimes pretty quickly with the best of intentions. But like that conversation, that engagement that you just said, the words that you just said, it's like, how can someone practice? Because I think that's also a big piece that we're missing is practice. I didn't I never had, it's not like I was role playing a lot on some of these things. I probably said some things poorly and had a reaction and went, well, I'm not going to say it like that again. That's probably not going to work, you know.
Right, sure,
and I like words.
We're all human.
Yeah, and that's something I truly just enjoy is words. And I think reading and listening to podcasts and hearing how other people execute it has made me feel like I've had practice. But how can we practice?
If you break it down into any interaction, and I will never give you more than 3 things to think about or work on. Unflappability, curiosity, and respect.
Okay.
Practice being unflappable, practice being curious, practice being respectful. So the person that walks out and says, well, if Tom just told me if I can't get it out in 4.5 minutes, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Because I do know that happens.
Yeah.
You have to understand they're probably saying that to somebody else that has a lot of interaction with me.
Yeah.
And if I've done everything I've told you with that person, they're going to back me up.
Right. True.
They're going to say, I'm sure that's not what he meant.
Yeah.
Because I have a history and a baseline of being that level respectful with everybody. Now, do I lose my shit? Absolutely. People pay way closer attention when I do.
I bet.
That's the
They're
benefit.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. And for me, it gets more serious. It gets more, I don't blow by screaming. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I just get really, one of my family members.
You say, no,
sweet angel. That is not how this is going to roll. One of my family members said, we can tell you're always really pissed when you get really respectful. Like, what I need you to do, please and thank you, is, like, they can tell that's pissed.
It's almost like the Southern version of, like, bless her heart. It's like, no.
We are not messing around with this. So if the problem is, or the challenge for our leaders is, you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
So just draw a line in the sand today. Just today. Just say, every interaction I have, I'm going to work on being unflappable, curious, and respectful.
Yeah.
Regardless of what's happening. And that will start the baseline. Note that can be your New Year's resolution, right? We're bouncing.
I love it.
Knocking on the door of 2024. You might as well.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get, it's like working out. Does your body get fit and toned because you went to the gym once? Nope.
Speak from personal experience.
We all speak from personal experience.
Right.
You consistent, but draw a line in the sand and just start. Just start.
I think too, maybe I think most employees, team members, I think they'd be pretty forgiving if you gave it a shot and then maybe had to circle back and say, maybe I need to say that a different way, or maybe I should have said that a different way. Like, I just think it takes some brevity. And I worry about some managers, leaders that like literally just have not found their voice. I mean, you have to be somewhat brave, a little bit vulnerable sometimes, especially if you're not 100% certain, again, what that reaction's going to be. But you have to do it the first time and the second time and the third time. I don't know how to convey to people that, like, you can't finish if you don't get started. And like, how do you want to be viewed by the people that work with you? Like, they should say things like unflappable, curious, respectful.
Mm-hmm. you're going to do it poorly.
Yeah.
Right?
Multiple times.
Maybe for somebody out there listening to or watching this podcast is going to be the line in the sand for them. And they're going to walk into tomorrow and they're going to be like, I'm going to try that. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to be unflappable. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be respectful. A promise I will make you is the universe takes that as a challenge. So
it says, hold my beer.
You have just hold my beer. You have just thrown down the gauntlet, and it's not going to be 5 damn minutes before a resident comes flying in, ripping the door off the hinges.
Right.
That's how this is going to roll.
Yeah.
It's just how it always rolls. You just need to know that's how it rolls for me too.
Yeah.
So nobody's above it, and everybody's going to do it poorly. So it's just basically giving you a really good opportunity to practice and give yourself some grace. Like if you do it badly, that's fine. I was going to be unflappable today. I wish I had a nickel, Warren Buffett, for every time I thought I'm going to be unflappable today, and I just lost my composure. Doesn't happen as much as it used to.
Yeah.
But it does still happen. And then I'm just like, okay. Well, that one was that water was over the dam. You know what? Back on the horse.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Yeah.
Just do it again. That's practice.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I say boil it down to 3 simple things and then practice and practice and practice. Nobody does it perfectly. People don't even do it well. But but if you're practicing, you're going to be better than if you're unintentional.
Yeah, every time. You'll get better every time. And
Let me say that again so you all hear it.
Yeah.
If you're practicing, you're going to be better than if you're unintentional.
Yeah. That's big.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah.
I think I've seen managers that have been physically ill when they needed to have a critical conversation with an employee.
Yeah.
I've seen them shy away and just, try to cover it up over and over and over again until this point where they just blow.
Yeah.
And then they're finished. And then they're just like, I'm done with this. This person has to go or whatever. And I'm just like, wait a minute.
Hold on.
Right. And I don't want anyone, I've felt like that. And I don't want anyone to feel like that. I also think, there's a level of it that just says control the controllables, but also, these people are in my care.
Yes.
And I'm supposed to be making them better, but I'm not doing anything to make myself better. You know what I find really alarming?
I would love to know.
is I can ask this question to so many people and I get deer in the headlights. What book are you reading? Oh. What podcasts do you listen to? The learning process. I know everyone has a lot going on.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have something? I don't know anybody that's just well, it's 5:45. The world is my oyster. I don't know that many people that are that way. And so I get it. But what I am shocked about is how many people want to be in a career path and their expectation for learning is only between the hours in which they're being paid.
Yeah.
And then when they don't advance, it's someone else's fault, or I didn't get the training, or I wasn't offered this, or they don't like me, or whatever ultimately that looks like. And they're doing zero to support themselves.
Yeah.
In an educational fashion, in a learning fashion. Do you have, other than obviously your podcast and my podcast, do you have any resources that were pivotal? You mentioned Warren Buffett's book, but do you have anything that is quickly digestible? And I'm only saying that meaning whether it's a chapter at a time or a podcast at a time. Is there something that changed anything for you or that you've recommended for others that has changed something for them?
Yeah. And I don't know that everybody can afford to subscribe to this, but you get free articles online. So
okay.
Free is my favorite 4-letter F word.
Same.
Yeah, second
my
favorite
4-letter F word.
So the Harvard Business Review.
Oh, yeah.
They are on the cutting edge of we subscribe at Equis.
Yeah. I have the unpaid, but I get the newsletter in my email.
Oh, yeah. It's phenomenal. And it's quick and it's digestible, and they've really perfected their game of getting it down to, something that you can read in, 15 minutes on a plane or in a car. Just had a really good article in one of their more recent versions about the importance of storytelling in organizations. And, so it's just that as a single resource is probably the best that I can offer. I'm right now reading Radical Candor.
I was just gonna say, if I got to say mine, Kim Scott.
Yeah,
I know you may never hear this, but big fan at this table.
Yeah,
Just Work.
Yeah,
great book.
Yes,
and big for me.
Yeah,
a few years back, and then I listened to the podcast they just had actually made me think of you, because in one of the first times that we engaged with you at like a lunch where it was a little bit more casual. We weren't in coaching mode. We were in eat lunch and chat mode.
Right. The Mexican
talked about
restaurant.
Yes, as it should
I remember.
be every day. You talked about your family dynamic, and that's where I learned the no, like when someone's just like way out of way off base or something like that. But they just did an episode that was how to communicate with your family over the holidays.
Oh, yes.
I was just like timely. And it was good. I think all of their content is good, and I think that's kind of digestible too. But there's been some phrasing, and she, says, care deeply, challenge directly.
Yeah.
And yes. I love that. I love that you're reading that.
Yes.
I love that. Which one? I think she's got 2 books. I don't know. Anyway.
The Radical Candor.
Oh, the actual Radical Candor. And then I think the next one was Just Work.
You know what hooked me about that book? Because so I'm really weird. I'll pick up a book and I will read, I'll look at the chapters.
Yeah.
And then, this is so bizarre. So I read the chapters and then I try to read the intro. And then I read page 43, because every book has a page 43.
Okay.
And if page 43 talks to me and I see some really good content when I do, because the chapters can look good and the intro can look good.
Yeah, the titles can be great. But you got to
be in the meat of it. And why I picked page 43, no idea.
Weird.
Just pick 43 and I've read through
it. That is
strange. And if it's good,
Agreed.
I know it's totally weird. But I'll be open and honest and vulnerable always. So if it speaks to me, then I'm like, okay, this is a book I'll keep. And in her book, Radical Candor, she talked about, and you know me in language, she talked about why she used candor, not honesty. Because somebody suggested that she named the book Radical Honesty. Mm-hmm. And she said, I don't like the word honesty because it creates the impression that someone here in this conversation has the truth.
Yeah, is
someone
right.
Here's being right or honest or right. And I don't like it. I like candor, because candor is I'm going to be straightforward with you from my perspective. It may or may not be the truth, but it will be my perspective. So it's just, I love that book. And back, rewinding a little bit to that, career progression thing, I would remind all our gentle listeners that I have been in the same role for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've not had a promotion. I'm not going to get a promotion. I'm going to retire from my role as corporate therapist. It's not about the title.
No, not
It's
at
about
all.
the influence. It's about the scope. It's about the breadth. It's about, are you constantly crafting your game? I've been in the same role with the same title for 20 years. And my influence today is 10 times what it was in year 1, 2, and 3. So it's not about the externals. It's about, what are you doing to raise your game? What are you doing to practice your trade craft?
I love that. What are you doing to raise your game?
Yeah. I will be raising my game until they put me in the box and put the nails in it. Right?
Same.
Like, I have no desire to coast. People are like, do you want to retire? I'm like, why? With my job? Why would I retire?
Yeah.
I'm hitting my
Please don't.
stride.
Please don't.
I don't have any intention. Like, if I lose my marbles, maybe. But as long as I can still think and I can still communicate and I have a good, quick, critical mind and I have access to the tool that I use called language, I have no desire to not raise my game.
One time, and I thought this was a great idea, as I usually do, we gave out gift cards to Amazon and earbuds, and made a contest and said, if whoever, consumes, and anything could count for points. It could have been an article like the Harvard Business Review. It could have been a podcast. It could have been a chapter in a book. And all you had to do was send us a message that said like, hey, this is what I did. And, it didn't have to be a full book report. It was just give us an example that we know that you did, what you said you did. Right, exactly. And then we'll move forward. And I thought the prize was fantastic. Like, we have the annual, the Apartment Association puts on the Prodigy Awards and Awards of Excellence. Yeah. And someone one time, I think, called it, everyone's called it like apartment prom. Because we get to get dressed messed up. And we get to get, so like we gave away to the winner a package that was, gift card to like Macy's, enough for anything that you would want to wear that evening. And then you got to leave class early. You got to get your hair done.
Nice.
I mean, it was intended to be a very like coveted prize.
Yeah.
And if I'm being wholly honest, I think
I told you I read page 43, so
I know
go
on
for
the
it.
last day, I think a few people just real fast, like, sent some stuff over, whether they did or didn't consume it. And I just thought, this makes my stomach hurt to know. And I felt like I've always felt like I had, just some great souls out there working alongside me, with me, under me, above me, whatever. Right. And I'm just like, what do I have to do to help people understand that if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right.
And you, and like do something to make yourself better, because it will come back to you. I don't know. I don't know how to motivate people, I guess.
Well,
because the people that are listening to this already know that secret.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they would have not tuned in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will go to my grave not understanding that one. Like not getting why do people just coast? And the only thing that I've come even close to in terms of understanding it is I have seen situations where people are coasting because they have so much else going on. Mm-hmm. All of their energy that they would devote to development is carved up. They're taking care of an aging parent. They've got a special needs child. They've got, like, there are certain life circumstances that can pull every bit of your energy into that. And the curious part of me always wants to be gracious with that. Like, is that what we have that's going on? But if there's nothing, like, and nobody would know who this is. I just was having a conversation with a leader in one of our corporate companies, not in property management. And she's got a really bright, talented young person, 26, and salaried, and leaves work at $4.59 every day.
Yeah.
Every day, regardless of what, they work in an accounting function no matter what's going on, every day, $4.59 out the door. And she's like, how do I talk to that person? Like, what exactly do I say?
Yeah.
Because there's not anything technically wrong with it, but and I said, here's what I would say. I wrote down, for those of you that weren't, I was writing down, care deeply, challenge directly. So let's care deeply and challenge directly. I would say that's becoming your brand.
Ooh.
That's becoming, $4.59 becomes your brand.
Yeah, ouch.
Right. So let's not have that be the brand. What do you want the brand to be?
Yeah.
Because if you want the brand to be promotable, then it's going to look different than that. And I'm not going to prescribe that for you. I'm not going to tell you what that looks like. I'm going to let you figure that piece out. But I'm going to tell you, you probably don't want $4.59 as your brand.
I have to tell you this, and it's a fast story. I had that conversation with someone once that was a manager, salaried manager at a property that had some challenges. And his response during the conversation was, well, Katrina, I do work until 5:10 sometimes. And I'm just like,
oh, Lord.
That was, well, remember you said there's the moment, where it's like we did all the nickels and now there's that moment. That was the moment.
That was
I was just like, I can't.
Yeah. Well, here's what people will do.
5:10.
When you have that conversation.
And it was about work, not time.
Right,
That's what he completely missed. And he's like, Katrina, I do work till 5:10 sometimes.
Yeah.
He lived on site.
God love it.
Anyway.
And again, back to, is that being driven by some external circumstance that, we don't have any idea about?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, because there is the possibility of that. People will say, well, what do you want? Do you want me to work until 9 o'clock every night? Like, they'll throw in those conversations with me the extreme.
Yeah.
And I don't bite on that. Like, my response to that is always, you know that's not what we're talking about. Like, I don't even entertain it. You know that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There are two extremes here. One extreme is you're here till 9:30. One extreme is 4:59.
Yeah.
Help me find, and let me help you find the middle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, because there is the middle. Could you walk around and see if anybody else needs a lift or a hand, or,
right, volunteer.
Could you get a jump start on a project? Because you never know what kind of shit's going to crash and burn tomorrow that might carve up your time. I mean,
yeah.
We're not saying 9. I'm not saying 9.
No.
I'm saying 5:30 once in a while. Would it kill you?
It's almost like the person had an alarm, like, 4:58, pack up, let's go.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I'd be curious to know what was motivating that. Well, anything that you really hoped that you got to say today that we didn't get to say yet? We could just wrap up. I mean, you've got, in summary,
we could go for
I think
like 100
all day.
more hours.
Yeah. Being unflappable.
Yes.
I love
curious.
it. Being curious.
Being
and then
respectful.
Being respectful. Practicing. Give yourself some grace.
It's your New Year's resolution
as you
for
try.
2024.
Read a book for the love. No, I'm kidding.
For the love of all that's holy, could you read a book?
I'm not telling anyone to read books, but it's almost like, I don't know. There's a lot of activity out there, like socially, and maybe LinkedIn, and there's so much self promotion going on, and sometimes I just wish like the quiet one would tell me first of all, I just always trust the quiet ones for some reason. I know that's weird, but I just want someone to say like, look, I read this book and it changed me in this way, and I think it would work for you too. And then, watch that turn into something in my career, watch that turn into something at home. I mean, whatever.
Whatever. Yes, there is one thing that I want to kind of wrap with, and then you can do the editing on the back end to get this down to a reasonable time. Or if people are really engaged, then, hang in with us for the better part of however long this has been. I have no idea how long we've run. 1 hour, 11 minutes. Love that.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of your folks here in the hallway, and he said, just normal introduction, what do you do? And I said, corporate therapist. And he said, is there like a tagline under that? And, so we had that conversation. And the tagline is this. There is a tagline. I help people build self-awareness, because the one thing that I have seen that is completely lacking, and it doesn't matter what level I work at, whether it's a C level, a director level, a manager level, of entry level, there is a shocking level or lack of self-awareness on the part of a lot of folks.
Yeah.
It's like a self-awareness lack pandemic. People don't have any idea how they're being perceived.
Yeah.
And that's the space I want to work in. So when I say self-awareness, I'm going to have a very specific definition of that. We all manage two things, our identity and our reputation. My identity is how I think I show up for you. My reputation is how you think I show up. And everybody has a gap. I have a gap. You have a gap.
For sure.
Because we can't possibly see ourselves the way other people see us. Yeah. I see myself as a hard worker that's super efficient and gets everything done in the time allotted. You see me as 4:59, right?
Yeah.
There's always a gap. And what you've got to try to figure out as a leader, if you're going to influence people, because remember, leadership's about relationships, is what's the gap for me? What's the gap between how I see myself and how the people that I'm attempting to influence see me? Because I'm going to be effective if they see me as having their back. I'm going to be ineffective if they see me as just wanting more out of them.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to help people close that gap, or at least be curious about it.
Yeah.
Like, what's your gap? What's it look like? And the major tool that we have for that is feedback. Just go in and start asking people.
Yeah.
From a place of curiosity, from a place of respect, go in, but figure out what the gap is. And then if you figure out you got a really big gap, you better have me on speed dial.
Right. Call time.
That's my plug.
Yeah. No, I love it. Speaking of plug, what, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people that really, if this was their first time hearing Tom Meier, would want to hear more from Tom Meier. And so you do have a podcast?
We do. Leadership is the Conversation.
Okay.
It's on, I think, Apple and Spotify.
Okay.
You can get access to it by going to our website. And if you just Google Equis Consulting, EQUIS, consulting.com, it'll take you right there. And then you can click on the podcast and it'll take you right in. We haven't done them in a little while because we've been on kind of a podcast pause because of some stuff that we've had our best year ever. So that's good.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow a lot of time because I'm on the road so much for the podcasting. So we're gonna get back to that in 2024.
That gives everyone time to catch up and listen to. I mean, you have content there, so it's kind of like binge watching. You know what I mean? I always like to start a show that I can finish, and so.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, but definitely. I'm grateful to Tom in many ways, and so glad that we were connected in the way that we were, and just what I've learned about myself and learned about others through the way that you facilitate everything. Like, there's not going to be a day where I don't want Tom Meier to be text
part of the
reachable,
conversation,
right? Tom. And in this case, I mentioned you on, 2 of my other podcasts, and I was just like, Tom, you have to come on. So I'm very much appreciative of it. People in the multifamily industry, let's focus on leadership. Let's get ourselves to a different place, because we can talk about or complain about or, just feel really down about some of the workforce issues, but we have to turn that around to ourselves and say, what can we do? And there's some things that we can absolutely do. So thank you so much for your time, Tom. It's been great.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here, and we'll look forward to hearing this live.
Yeah, absolutely.